Well, my next guest tweeted last night in Arabic in anticipation of today's violence. It's a translation, quote, "Provocations will impact stability and security. The army will bear a great responsibility once again to ensure safety and control over the situation on the street," he said, "will only generate a counter street, and I warn that the free people will not succumb to attempts to bring them to their knees," along with the hashtag "Justice is stronger than your intimidation. Samy Gemayel joins us now, and I just want you to explain what you meant by that, why you included that hashtag, and to your mind, what provoked this violence, Samy?
Hello, Becky. Actually, we believe that Hezbollah have been trying to take over anything that has to do with the state of Lebanon. They pressured to elect their ally as president of Lebanon. Then they took over the parliament, then the government, and now they are trying to destroy the judiciary, this institution that has been standing up against all the threats against the judge who is trying to do his job and hold accountable all those who were responsible of the Beirut port explosion. So because some of his allies were indicted, they decided to remove the judge. So the solution for them is to get rid of the judge. So this for us, it's they are trying to destroy the judiciary in Lebanon and put the Lebanese army in a very difficult position, also under attack. And we fear for the whole institutions of Lebanon to fall under Hezbollah's grip.
I just want to remind our viewers who you are, Samy. You are a Lebanese politician, a former member of the Lebanese parliament, and following that explosion in August of 2020, you resigned along with two other members of your Kataeb party. That was on August the 8th, just a couple of days after that port explosion. Hezbollah and its allied movement, which is called Amal movement, had called for protests today against Lebanon's highest court's refusal to replace this judge, Bitar, overseeing the Beirut blast investigation. Both of those parties have accused the right-wing Lebanese Forces Party of sniper attacks against their supporters today. I do want, for the benefit of the viewers who may not understand the machinations of Lebanese politics as much as you do, you have a family history of being imbued in the politics of Lebanon. What do you make of that accusation, briefly?
You know, Hezbollah have been using violence and threats, and even they are accused of killing the former Prime Minister of Lebanon by the International Court, Rafiq Hariri. And they have been threatening the judge for the past 2 weeks. Hassan Nasrallah, the head of Hezbollah, accused the judge of being biased and threatened to remove him. And he sent someone from Hezbollah to the Court of Justice to threaten the judges physically and personally. So and they have, it's not the first time they use violence. They are known to be a militia that is fighting in Syria, fighting everywhere in the region, taking orders from Iran and doing Iran's job in Lebanon. So
Samy,
after years and years of this situation, you know, the Lebanese people are fed up. So when they continue to threaten you, some Lebanese people did a reaction. So what happened today is a reaction to a very long-lasting threats and even violence used by Hezbollah.
Yeah, I do want to be completely transparent for the benefit of our viewers here. Your uncle founded the Lebanese Forces Party. He was, of course, assassinated during the civil war. And I have to say, there have been a number of people who have told me today that what they witnessed on the streets was reminiscent of that civil war back between 75 and 1990. So what you're saying is, without the Lebanese Forces Party admitting to or suggesting they were involved today, you say it wouldn't surprise you. Is that your point?
No, not at all. I think that the residents of this area of Beirut, are known to be against Hezbollah, and these residents are fed up with Hezbollah using violence against them all the time. What we are saying, that we want the Lebanese army to be present everywhere and to get rid of each and every weapon in Lebanon. We want peace. We want to live in peace. We don't want violence anymore. But when you have an armed militia that is threatening you every day and destroying the state of law and saying that you don't have this right to go to the tribunal or to go to the justice to get your rights, it means that you are destroying your right to live in a state of law and in a country that gets you your rights without having to resort to violence. So we are in a position today, we are held as hostages by Hezbollah, and some people decided to react to these threats and to these ongoing provocations. So yes, what happened today is terrible. We don't want this to happen again. And what we are asking as a solution for what we witnessed today is for the Lebanese state to take total control of all the regions, to get rid of all the weapons and bring Lebanon back to stability. And this is what we are calling for. But unfortunately, you have an armed militia that has rights no one has. Every time they are indicted with something, they consider themselves above the law. They consider that they don't have to answer to any kind of judge or justice system in Lebanon. They provoke people. They can take Lebanon to war against Israel. They can take Lebanon to war in Syria. They can take Lebanon to war against the Arab world. They can provoke the United States of America every day by using also threats, etc., etc. This is not Lebanon. Lebanon wants to be a neutral country. We want to live in peace. We want to have stability. We want to be able to raise our children without fearing what happened in the war. War was a huge lesson to all the Lebanese people. No one wants to go back there. We just want to live in peace. And unfortunately, we have an armed militia that is financed and armed by Iran, is not letting us build our country for the future.
You alluded to the United States there, so let's just talk about the latest from the State Department. The spokesperson there, Ned Price, accusing Hezbollah of threatening and intimidating Lebanon's judiciary and of, and I quote him here, terrorist and illicit activities that threaten Lebanon's security, stability and sovereignty. And he went on to say that the US believed Hezbollah was, quote, more concerned with its own interests and those of its patron Iran than in the best interests of the Lebanese people. Is that true? Is it more concerned with its own interests than those of the Lebanese people?
Hassan Nasrallah, the head of Hezbollah, is clearly stating that his leader is the leader of the Iranian Republic, Islamic Republic. So he is not hiding it, and he is very clear about it, that they are a part of the Iranian system, the Iranian armed network in the region. So you have the same thing in Iraq, you have the same thing in Syria, you have all these proxies of Iran that are doing Iran's job. And unfortunately, Hezbollah is using Lebanese citizens to fight wars that have nothing to do with the Lebanese interests.
I want to read you just some comments that we have just got from the new Prime Minister, Mikati. He speaking to one of the local newspapers, Al Nahar. He said, and I quote here, Samy, the government is an executive power and we cannot interfere in the judiciary. He says he will remain in power and will calmly handle the investigation into the Beirut port blast. He says the army informed him that security in Beirut has improved. And he said he apologizes to the Lebanese people for today's violence in Beirut. This is the new, or relatively new, just weeks old now, new Prime Minister of Lebanon. What do you make of his comments?
We need more from anyone who is in charge of Lebanon. We need someone to take responsibility to prevent these actions before they happen. I actually talked to the Minister of Defense before these events yesterday, and I warned him, and I told him that things are not looking good. Social media, the violent tweets and social media action since yesterday was very clear that something was going to happen today. And I warned them, and I asked them to send the army and to be present to avoid any violence of that sort. Unfortunately, nothing was done. So we don't need words, we need actions. We need a clear statement from the government supporting the judiciary and supporting the independence of the judiciary. We really want the judges to be free to do their work without any kind of threats or any kind of interference. So unfortunately, we don't want words, we want actions.
Well, I spoke exclusively to the new Prime Minister just a few weeks back. Just have a listen to what he told me about Hezbollah's influence in Lebanon when we spoke.
I'll tell you frankly, I'm very pragmatic, and I see what I care is I care for Lebanon. How I can save Lebanon. I have two ministers, yes, they are friends of Hezbollah, and Hezbollah as a political party exists in Lebanon. So I cannot bypass this community. I cannot bypass this party. And they let's say, I have two specialized people that I can deal with.
You will have heard those sort of comments from a Prime Minister of Lebanon time and time again. Just explain why it is that the Prime Minister isn't prepared to call out Hezbollah for the benefit of our international viewers.
I think I know, and everyone knows in Lebanon that the majority in the parliament is controlled by Hezbollah. So the government that is in place today was voted by Hezbollah. And Hezbollah was the main anchor of this government. So it is normal that they are trying to put it in front of the international community as it's a normal situation, and in fact it is not. Because what Mr. Miati is not saying is that we don't have a problem with representing everyone in the government. We have a problem in letting those who are out of the outlaws of Lebanon continue to act as they wish and being above the law. This is our problem, is having Lebanese citizens having the right to bear arms and to fight wars everywhere in the world, and other Lebanese are under the law, and they are trying to live a normal life in a normal country. So this is what's not normal. So we cannot deal with Hezbollah as if it was a normal political party in Lebanon.
The U.S. Undersecretary of State for Political Affairs, Victoria Nuland, is in Beirut today. There are a number of senior international leaders on the ground in Beirut today. Nuland made this statement in the wake of today's violence. Have a listen.
We also, as we always do, confirmed our steadfast support for the Lebanese army and internal security forces. We acknowledge the vital role that they play in security and stability here, and the very difficult task that they have. Today, I'm pleased to announce an additional $67 million in new U.S. support for the Lebanese army, bringing our total of support this year to $187 million.
Yep, and let's be quite clear that that aid or support had been temporarily suspended during the Trump administration. This is support that is provided by the U.S. government and has been now for years to support the Lebanese army. Do you genuinely feel that the US and indeed the wider international community has Lebanon's back at this point?
What I know is that supporting the Lebanese army is a vital thing for the future of Lebanon. And I wish that all those who really want to help Lebanon support Lebanon through its institutions, through the army and through the Lebanese government, and not by supporting militias on the ground that are led by them. So the important thing that the US is doing is helping Lebanon through its official institutions, and the Lebanese army today represents all the Lebanese people. You have from all sects. It's a very independent institution, and we cannot count on anything else than the Lebanese army to preserve the unity of Lebanon and be the pillar of the new Lebanon that we wish to build. I want to add something.
Okay, let's talk. So sorry, I need to just press you here because I am running out of time. Let's talk about that new Lebanon that you would like to see built. What is the future looking like for Lebanon at this point, sir?
I hope it will
the
not
end of the electricity.
Yes, it's unfortunately we are under.
We can hear you.
Yeah.
So your lights went out, which is, you have to put up with that in Lebanon, don't you?
Exactly. Actually, this is an example on the situation we're living in without electricity, without the basic needs that Lebanon used to have. And I hope that we can very quickly get out of this. In order to do that, we need competent and free governors of Lebanon to take charge. And we have an election in 6 months. And I hope that the Lebanese people will be able to raise their voice freely, democratically, and peacefully in the ballots, and to be able to create a new future for them. I would add something, Becky, if you allow me. 1 week ago, an Iranian officer officially stated that they have 4 armies in the region, and he stated that Hezbollah was one of them. So we are somehow in a state of occupation, and the only way to deal with that is to raise our voice to the international community, and this is what we're doing right now with you, thanks to you.
Okay.
And internally, in the elections, to get a big group of parliamentarians that are ready to fight for the independent sovereignty and a modern and democratic Lebanon.
And the problem is, do the people of Lebanon any longer want to vote for any of those parliamentarians? I'm going to just leave you up there. OK, we've come off the shot, but I think it's important not to come off that shot going forward, because that is the story of Lebanon. Samy, thank you. I'm sorry the lights went out on you twice. But as you say,
I'm sorry.
With very little electricity every day, it's something you put up with. It's important that our viewers see that that's what the people of Lebanon have to put up with on a daily basis at this point. And we wish you and the people of Lebanon the best. Thank you very much indeed for joining us. We're going to take a very short break. Back after this.